Chapter 18. Old Ghosts. My parents. I miss them. I miss what it was like to have a family. I miss the cold winter rainy days where mother and I would sit by the fire while she told me stories. I miss how my father used to hold me when I got scared at night. I miss how my mother would cook delicious meals even if we didn't have much. I miss how father used to bring animals home to cook. I miss how mother and I used to look at the rain together. I miss having a normal life. Where did it all go wrong? It was a reality, where it just wasn't meant to be. Naruto-kun. Soon after they finished the signing, they were reversed summoned back into their home in silence. The woman looked up at the boy in their home once again. It wasn't a surprise to her when she saw the look of confusion laced in his features. To say that he was surprised was an understatement. He was hit by a bombshell far more powerful than anything he has ever heard before. Konan, Senju? He replied as he sat down, but that means you're related to Granny. Yes, it's true, Konan answered solemnly. I can't deny it now. My last name is Senju. One of the only ones that I know are left. The boy let that information sink in. Was he really who she says she is? There isn't a possible way, is there? Why did this information come to the surface now? Too many questions roaming the boy's head caused him to rub his temple. Konan-chan, why didn't you say anything about it until now? I'm pretty sure it was bad, but you could have used your name to your advantage tagging along with Konoha. What? The woman gasped. That wasn't possible. I would have been killed. She sat down next to the orange-haired boy with her head in her hands. You don't know how dangerous my name actually was to a Megakure. Just as quickly as the Uzumaki were slaughtered against their will, my clan was also a high-value target. They gave no remorse to anyone that bore those names. It would have been the end of me had my secret gone out. I only survived by my parents' secrecy. They didn't allow anyone knowing of their last names. They chose a fake name, and I didn't know anything about it until I heard my mother and father fighting one night. I was lucky that my mother wasn't a Senju. I don't have the famous ability that other Senju have. Hey, Naruto replied while laying a hand on her shoulder. He pursed his lips in concentration. Tell me everything. Konan looked at him momentarily in surprise, before lowering her eyes. If you say so. I mean it. Tell me everything about you. I want to know what really happened to you when you were younger, he said in conviction. Tell me about Konan Senju. Konan sighed in thought as she tried to put the memories together in her head. Truthfully, she never thought that she would ever have to retell her past until now. Most memories she could recall really left her feeling empty within herself. She didn't like thinking about her past at all, and digging them up now started to take a toll on her. Okay, but promise me that what is said here stays between us. Do you have to promise me that much? Her side lowered as she bit her lip. If the time comes and I want anyone else knowing, I will let them know myself. The genin nodded his head softly with a tug at his lips. Okay, Konan-chan. I promise. You have my word as a ninja. She smiled softly, while gazing at him in a peculiar way. Okay Naruto, it's star. Knock knock knock. Huh? Both replied in unison. I'll get the door, Naruto said while heaving forward, pushing his weight up. I wonder who it is. Naruto twisted the cool handle that grazed his fingertips. Opening the door created a draft that wafted through his hair. Yo, Naruto. The boy followed the voice with his eyes to see a lazy eye staring at him. Huh? Kakashi-sensei? What are you doing here? Hopefully I wasn't interrupting anything, the teacher replied casually to the orange-infested boy. Naruto looked at Konan, who gazed at his teacher with curiosity, and saw her slight disappointment. No, not at all, he replied waving his hand in dismissal. We were just talking is all. What do you need? I'm sorry Naruto for intruding. I know it's real soon, but you're required for another mission, Kakashi replied coolly. Actually, it's a very important mission. Huh? Naruto replied dozing off on his hand. Drew lightly dribbled down one side of his mouth as he sat there. What did you say? I said we are almost there, Yamato answered. Geez, Naruto, pay attention. The boy looked around at his surroundings and noticed the rocking of his foundation. But Captain Yamato, you said that a few hours ago. It's been forever now. I'm tired of sitting here waiting. I want to get started on my mission already. Patience, Naruto, the captain replied. We will be there in a moment. Please just relax until then. Naruto sighed in exasperation as he stood up and walked to the railing that overlooked the ocean and rested his chin on his palm. Yeah, he was bored out of his mind. Sitting on a boat didn't really help his eager anticipation of doing something new. After staying in the village and after the death of Sakura, he wanted to go somewhere fresh. Too many bad feelings made him feel claustrophobic. Konan played through his mind while the waves beat against the boat forcefully. Konan being a Senju was really a game changer for him. Not only was he related to the first and second Hokage, she was also related to the fifth. Even reminding himself about that made him shake his head. I wonder what Conan's story was about? She never did get to tell me. He peered to his right and saw the woman sitting against the cabin with her eyes closed. She hasn't said much since we got interrupted. I wonder if she is okay. Conan laid there in silence as she felt the rocking of the boat against the waves. The calmness broke all of the tension within herself and made her rather sleepy. Even through the silence and peace, she still found herself thinking a little upon the near spill of her past. The only ones who knew anything about her were Nagato and Yuhiko. She never told Jiraiya about who she was, and she didn't want anyone else to know until now. She just wanted to forget her past that badly. There must have been something in the air. Perhaps Naruto slipped something into her drink while she wasn't watching? No, Naruto would never do that. Maybe she just trusted Naruto to that extent. As a matter of fact, maybe she was trusting the teen a little too much. I trust Naruto. Nagato was right. There was no reason not to. And now Conan's fingers slid on the cool metal beneath them as he gripped in confusion and sadness. I can't help but be beside him nowadays. I'm worried. Am I becoming too attached to Naruto? She opened her amber eyes and stared at the lone Uzumaki leaning against the railing. He had a very distant look in his face. Her hand moved to her chest as she gazed upon the boy. She felt a warmth within her chest that was unlike any other feeling she had so far. Her hand tightened on the pocket of the vest before her eyebrows arched in perplexity. Naruto-kun, I really wouldn't be here without you. Maybe you mean more to me than I realize. She looked at the boy again and took in his features. His orange hair flowed back and forth in the breeze. His skin was tanned from all of the outside activities he had done. The way his cheeks curved really intrigued the woman into looking at him longer. His blue eyes glowed like the reflections of the ocean. Her eyes lowered softly as she observed his form. A peculiar emotion started rolling in her chest uncomfortably before she shook her head violently and sighed in exasperation. I shouldn't think like that. What am I doing? Crash. Ow. What the hell was that? The Jinchuriki shouted loudly while gaining his bearing. He rubbed his head furiously from the sudden knock against the railing. He glared to the direction of the sound and saw a peach-colored tentacle gliding against the boat before it crashed back into the water with a loud slap. Ah. I don't know, Yamato responded hastily. Whatever it was, I think it's coming back. It's the squid. A dark-headed man yelled with one eye closed. I forgot to mention that there is a monster squid in these waters. I don't know how he found us. Squid? Naruto asked to himself. Hey, didn't Gramps say something about an octopus? Naruto-kun. Conan hollered as she blazed across the ship to the teen's side. This is no time be lost in thought. Be prepared for battle. Conan's right. We have to be prepared for anything. Yamato responded loudly while leaning into a stance. Water erupted against the boat as a gigantic squid brushed its body against the hull, causing the people to tumble around on the top. The boat began to angle itself sideways, almost capsizing then and there. Naruto tumbled faster and faster to the edge as he struggled to gain composure. No. Naruto-kun. Grab my hand. Conan screamed out for him and tried to grab him, but to no avail as he plummeted headfirst into the violent water. Yamato's eyes widened as he saw the Jinchuriki plummet into the water. Naruto. You're out of luck, squid, you hear? I will give you something to fear. A loud voice boomed as an equally large bull with tentacles came out of the water and slammed the squid with a hard punch that crackled in the air. The squid flew through the sky in a trajectory leading to a distant pat of the ocean, before a softer splash was heard followed by a rough waving boat. That's Killer Bee. We're saved. The one-eyed man yelped in happiness. Naruto floated as his limbs swam lifelessly in the ocean. My chest feels heavy, it burns. I didn't think it would be this difficult to stay at the top of the water. I can't keep my eyes open anymore. No. Naruto yelled as Sasuke violently swung the kunai across Sakura's throat. Sakura's eyes widened as blood splattered all over her paste-colored coat. Naruto's heart shattered into pieces as Sakura's life faded out of her eyes like a dying candle. Hey, Naruto-kun, can you hear me? Naruto-kun. Naruto opened his eyes widely and sat up in a confused state. The sun shined brightly through the white billowy curtains that flowed in a soft breeze. A faint bird chirping ensnared the young man into losing his thoughts in the beautiful scenery outside. Momentarily, he looked around the room and quickly realized that it wasn't his room at all. This room was a lot bigger than his old room. The strangest thing about the room was that through all of the new things that occupied this room, there were items from his own apartment that scattered the dresser and corners. He looked to the peach-colored wall and noticed a poster that was an exact replica of the one he had on his wall at home. Where am I? He questioned curiously. Before his thoughts carried any further, the door to the room creaked open in a musical fashion and he saw a bright smile appear before his very eyes. Naruto-kun. The woman's blue hair looked freshly washed and dangled freely against her shoulders. Her face glowed warmly in reflection of the light from the open window, and her eyes also shone brightly colored orange. Her figure was accentuated by a lean on one leg. She wore a white tank top that fit snugly against her body, and wore dark-colored shorts that showed off her toned legs. "Conan-chan, what are you doing?" Naruto asked, dumbfounded. She had an unusual look on her that stunned the teen. Her lips curved beautifully in an upward smile. She seemed to have a blush that the Jinchuriki barely noticed. Conan giggled softly at Naruto's antics and started walking towards the bed before she kneeled down on the plush top. "Isn't it obvious, silly? I'm coming to wake you up." Naruto's heartbeat quickened as he saw Conan's eyes turn from sweet to devious. She crawled up to his form and grabbed his shoulder before she planted her lips against his in a solid kiss. Naruto's eyes widened when he felt her body push against him heatedly. Naruto's mind melted as Conan pushed herself onto him so desperately. "You made me this way, Naruto," she mumbled in between kisses. The woman started to run her hand up his shirt before the teen's mind decided to finally kick in. He abruptly stopped the kiss as he pushed her away from him in a desperate attempt to take a breath. "Conan-chan, why are you? Isn't it obvious?" "I'm trying to wake you up," she replied with a forlorn look upon her face. Naruto became confused at her statement. "What do you mean?" "I'm already awake." "No, Naruto-kun," Conan answered as she laid her body against him softly. Her hand lay gently against his chest as she tugged softly at his shirt. "I want you to wake up. Your warmth is something I've grown to adore. Please don't leave me. You're everything to me." Her body began to heave as she continued speaking. "Please wake up, Naruto, wake up." Naruto's eyes opened hesitantly as he awoke to a darkened room. He was lying comfortably on a bed and could feel his lungs hurting. "That's right, I fell in the water. We must be at the island now." He tried to get up, but an unknown weight was attached to his shoulder and arm. When his eyes adjusted, he saw a female sleeping against him peacefully. He could feel her breath hitting the side of his cheek as they both laid there. Wanting to get up, Naruto began to move his feet to angle them off of the bed. "You're finally awake." The orange-haired teen froze in his movements as he turned his head to see Conan's eyes softly glowing in the darkness. He could feel her concerned stare boring into his own eyes. "Yeah," was all he could muster. Did she always know when he was awake, or was she watching him the entire time? He wasn't sure, but the more he thought about it, the more disturbing it was. Naruto lay there silently as he felt her fingers glide softly against his forearm, running against the hairs that crossed his arm. "Conan-chan, why are you laying with me?" It was Conan's turn to grow silent. Her hand froze against his arm and settled on top of it. I saw you lying in bed sleeping, but you were tossing and turning, so I took it upon myself to lay beside you and give you comfort." Naruto processed that information slowly before Conan continued. "If it means anything, you became quiet when I started to pet your arm." Naruto blushed heavily at Conan's response and swallowed ever so slightly like something was caught in his throat. She has been acting strange these past few days and Naruto didn't leave it unnoticed. He was starting to feel that maybe Conan was opening up more to him, and he couldn't deny that her pet against his arm was comforting. He sighed as he laid there in silence. He needed to know, "What happened after I drowned in the ocean?" The woman blew air from her tired lungs in a saddened strength. "Killer Bee rescued you with one of his tentacles. You were unconscious and weren't breathing when he brought you to the boat, but I quickly resuscitated you." Her hand tightened lightly against his arm as they laid there. The boy noticed the feeling of distress emanating from the woman next to him. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you in time." It was strange feeling defenseless in that situation. "I should have been better prepared." The teen said nothing to her apology and caused Conan to lower her eyes in contempt. That's right. She was useless. Completely and utterly useless. Naruto almost died, and she couldn't do anything about it. Her mind repeated the same words and regurgitated a known feeling that swept her away in a euphoric disaster. Useless. Careless. Worthless. Unreliable. But just as soon as it became too much, Conan's breath hitched as she felt a warmth touch her fingers. Naruto laid his palm against her hand. "You did what you could," the boy replied softly. "That's all that matters. You still saved me, and I'm still here and grateful for what you've done." His head turned to face hers as they locked eyesight with one another. That passion in his eyes radiated lowly against the reflections coming from the window adjacent to the bed. "Don't ever think that you're worthless because you're not. You're far from it." Conan's eyes widened slightly as she relayed the sweet words that echoed through her mind. It's almost like he was reading her mind, and the way his eyes bored into her own looked like he was peering right into her soul. How can he do that? Naruto smiled lightly as it was his turn to rub her hand. His thumb caressed her knuckles up and down, following the ridges and dipping between them. Conan didn't say anything as she felt the sensation sweep a flood of emotions through her being. Her eyes closed softly, wanting to break eye contact with him. That feeling she was receiving was unexpectedly relieving, and she felt a burning sensation in her chest as they laid there. "What is going on with me?" she questioned in a slight fear. She couldn't understand it. Her heart thumped roughly against her chest as she sat stone still, afraid to even shake the wrong way. She felt Naruto's hand move from hers, but she didn't dare to open her eyes. He would look at her with that look of his, that fiery gaze, that she began to appreciate. He would rip her apart from the inside with that piercing stare. She couldn't afford his attention. She gasped. Naruto's hand found its way to her waist, and she couldn't help her eyes to burst open and see the orange-haired boy looking at her with such delicacy. Before she could react, Naruto pushed himself closer to her and tucked his hand behind her head and pushed to his chest to have her nose pressed lightly against him. Konan tensed before she relaxed in Naruto's embrace. It seemed to calm her thoughts and she didn't mind that one bit. "It's okay, Konan. I know you've been under a lot of stress recently." Konan breathed a little roughly against his shirt as they laid there serenely. This was the first time in a long time that she ever had anyone comfort her in this way. Finding someone who could be there for her in that way was nearly impossible, and she wouldn't doubt that, if Naruto wasn't around, she wouldn't ever have this type of comfort again. Her thoughts trailed aimlessly as they laid there in their bliss, although there was one thing that kept reappearing in her conscience. "Hey, Naruto-kun. Do you still want to know about what my family was like?" She waited patiently, uncertain as to what Naruto was thinking. He probably didn't care about it anymore. Why would her life be important? It's all in the past now. It's most likely just a faded memory to him. She continued to wonder, before she couldn't take the silence. She had to know his answer. It was killing her. "Naruto-kun, snore." Konan furrowed her brow in frustration. It was at this moment that she realized Naruto was indeed a fast sleeper. She took a breath and slid her arms around Naruto and embraced him in his sleeping state. "I guess I'm going to have to get used to that. I can always tell him later anyway. There's no hurry." She left it with that final thought before she closed her eyes and fell into Naruto's rhythm. Little did she know, tomorrow would be the day she would see something that she would never forget. Life always has a way of coming back around full circle.
End of chapter 18.